we're discussing the concept of immaturity of understanding. You see, a lot of us are stuck. Not because life is working against us, but we're stuck simply because we just don't understand how life works. See, we don't understand how life works. And so because of that misunderstanding about how life works, we'll sit around and question life. We'll sit around and talk about, question life and rehearse questions in our mind that really just talks to our misunderstanding about how life works. For instance, you may sit around and say, why does my life suck? Why am I not where I want to be? Why don't I have enough money in the bank? Why don't I have a spouse, a career? And see, we rehearse these questions in our mind, and what ends up happening, it creates this emotional drain. And this emotional drain, through constantly questioning why life is happening to you, this emotional drain will eventually turn into or lead to you falsely concluding that you're unhappy with life, or your life is unhappy. And as a result of feeling this way, that life, where you are right now, you're unhappy with life, things aren't going well, because you're misinterpreting this emotional drain, because you consistently sit around and question life, because you have immature understanding. As a result of this, you do things simply to feel better. So you may change careers simply to feel better. You may, do something different. You may quit something to start something else, simply because you're trying to feel better about your situation that you have misunderstood. So you constantly go through this process, creating more emotional drain, leading to more unhappiness with life. Since you're not comfortable with not having enough money, since you're uncomfortable with not having a job, since you're uncomfortable with living with someone else, you create more toxicity within your life. You say inadvertently, the audacity of life to put me in a situation where I don't have enough money. The audacity of life to put me in a situation where I don't have a spouse. The audacity of life to put me in a situation where I don't have a good paying job. The audacity of life to put me in a position where I may be living with someone else. You see, that's how you think. When you go through the process of questioning life, why am I in this situation? And you go through that questioning, and you create this emotional drain on yourself, you're really saying, I can't believe life is putting me in this situation. I can't believe that life has not provided for me happiness and success versus me earning it. That's why you think that way. So you look at life sometimes as the audacity to be in the situation, which is actually the foundation of you creating this emotional drain, because you simply lack understanding. You have immature understanding. And that's why we're in this space. There's nothing wrong with your life. Life is not built to give you something like in other religions. You don't like your life right now because you have created this emotional drain, because you question life. You repeat these questions in your mind. I'm going to take my time today, because obviously the topic of this conversation is what? Immaturity of understanding. So I'm going to take my time, because I want to try to translate to you a level of understanding before we get into meditation that I think you will need to progress yourself and be happy with life. In ancient Kemet, in our tradition, in the Ma'asah, we have this concept called Ayari Ma'ah. And it loosely translates to grace. But in Christianity, the divine grace is the God's favor on man and woman, the undeserved favor that God displays towards man and woman. That's what Christianity calls as grace. So therefore, in other words, man and woman are still blessed, even though they don't deserve it. That's what the Christian concept of grace means, is God's favor, God's undeserved favor towards man and woman. But that's not how it works in the Kamitic philosophy. That's not how it works in the Ma'asah, the philosophy of understanding. Let's think about it from this standpoint. We say and we rehearse and we repeat, and you can't say this enough, so keep saying it. There's not too many times we can say what I'm about to say. Immature, the source, is manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself within man and woman. This entity manifested according to its awareness. It brought Ma'at into manifestation, and all the galaxies, almost an infinite number of galaxies, into manifestation, and the things of those galaxies into manifestation. The question we have to ask ourselves is, why did it bring these things into manifestation? Because this is a foundational piece of understanding. So you're not going to understand life until you understand the reality of how your life was brought into manifestation. Because see, not only does Ma'at include the almost infinite number of galaxies and things of that nature, and the things of those galaxies, but that also includes your life, and as many situations are a part of that quote unquote conglomerate. It's a part of that. So when we say Immature is manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself within man and woman, and it brought Ma'at into manifestation, we have to sit back and go, why did it bring Ma'at into manifestation? Which includes my life, which includes all the individual things of my life. All the things that I can consider quote unquote bad in my life, all the things that I can consider quote unquote good in my life were brought into manifestation according to the supreme intelligence. Because see, the concept of Ma'at means intelligence par excellence. So we have to sit back and go, why did it bring all these things into manifestation? The why in Christianity says that God brought everything into manifestation so it could observe the goodness of man and woman. So in essence, according to the Christians, God exists outside of this thing, brought it into manifestation so it could observe, so it could watch this movie of the life of man and woman, eat popcorn and watch the movie of the life of man and woman. It's not a part of that situation. That's not what we say in the Ma'asah. The Ma'asah says that Ma'at came into manifestation according to the awareness of source. Now here's the beautiful part, and here's the thing that you got to understand so you can understand your life. It transitioned its consciousness into this house it built. Now let me say that again. It brought Ma'at, which includes almost the infinite amount of galaxies, and the things of those galaxies, and the things in between those galaxies, and the things that stand above those galaxies, including every aspect of your individual life. It brought into manifestation. And then it transitioned its consciousness into this thing. So it lives in the house it built. That's completely different than existing outside of the house simply as an observer. Now the question is, since this entity is intelligence par excellence, the question is, why would it do that? Why would it bring this entity into manifestation and then transition its consciousness into all things, finding its highest expression within man and woman? Why would it dwell in the house it built? The only intelligent rationale that you could come up with is that the house has to benefit the source. There's some benefit to that. That's the only reason why it would bring it into manifestation. It wouldn't bring the house into manifestation to burn on top of itself. There's benefit there to the source. That's the only reason why it would bring this thing into manifestation and then transition its consciousness into this thing. So the question becomes, for your understanding, for your life, is what is the benefit? Well, the benefit can be fancy cars, good food, nice looking women, nice looking men. Can't be a good job. It can't be any of those material things. We call those things wabu. Can't be any of those things because source existed prior to the notion of those things. Source cannot be added to nor subtracted from. So therefore, these things cannot have any meaning to source. So then therefore, what is the thing that has meaning to source? Now, I want you to really pay a close attention to this, because this is going to help you with your life. Because if you're sitting there questioning your life, if you're sitting there trying to find meaning in your life, you have to have understanding. Your unhappiness is the result of immature understanding. If source transition is consciousness into all things and finding its highest expression in man and woman, if we are to say that man and woman are what? Both ignorance and experience, and we're evolving towards what? A higher experience, the highest experience that could possibly that can possibly manifest in the life of man or woman has to be the experience of source. So when source says it transitioned itself through the vehicle of man and woman, it's saying that what's a benefit to us is the transfiguration of us, the evolution of us to higher states of experience. That is the only thing that is a benefit to the self, because through us it's seeking to find itself through our life experiences. So the only thing that we can sit here and say that is a benefit to self, to source, right? One of the reasons why it brought this house into manifestation, and since it exists through man and woman, the only homage that man and woman can truly give to source is what? The transfiguration to higher states of evolution. That's what's a benefit to the source. So it's only intelligent that this house, Ma'at, was brought into manifestation to benefit source. That's only intelligence. You're not going to build a house and then, design a house to burn down on top of you. You're going to build a house to be a benefit to you. So this house includes your life in as many situations. I hope you are receiving that well, because, we want you to truly have understanding and truly bring yourself into prosperity. So I want you to truly feel as though I mean that. All right, so now we're going to go through the Aridu 5. Now let me break this down too, because we're playing the game of understanding. Let me break this part down to you. A Thesu can be almost infinite. You can have many Thesu, and that Thesu means, some people call them verses. We don't call them verses. We call, rational statements that tie our logic back to the source. That's what we call a Thesu. A Thesut with a T, there's only 7 of those. And the ancient Egyptians thought that each one had magical properties once understood by man and woman. So in other words, if you could live according to these 7 Thesut, you would have this magical prosperity and abundance, protection, favor, all these different things. You see, in the Ma'asah, you don't get undeserved favor. The favor that you get is based on the effort that you put forth. And so the Thesut are magical things. And these Thesut, each Aridu, or subconscious, right, or what the Hindu call chakra, each chakra has a governing Thesut. Because there's only 7 chakras, there's only 7 Aridu, right? And there are only 7 things that govern each chakra or each Aridu. I just want you to understand that. So here we're talking about Aridu 5, Thesut 5. And this is what we call also what? The nickname of these things we call what? Savior statements. Reminding us as the Savior manifesting in this existence that we exist in, right? Once source transition is consciousness into the man and woman, now source exists through the experience of man and woman. So we have to be reminded of who we are. It says, I am Ra, the intelligence as Ma'ah. Ma'ah is the supreme intelligence. Intelligence is embedded in every aspect of your life. Once Ma'at came into manifestation, the concept of disorder is an impossibility. It is impossible for disorder to exist. It is impossible for chaos to exist. So when the Greeks say that chaos is something that happens after manifestation, that is impossible. If we are to say that source is the supreme intelligence par excellence, then what we're saying is that once this thing is manifested, once Ma'at exists, the concept of disorder is an impossibility. The concept of chaos, space within Ma'at that isn't bound to laws and truth and understanding is an impossibility. It's impossible. Chaos only existed prior to the manifestation of Ma'at. So every aspect of your life is in order. You don't have enough money in the bank right now? Your life is in order. You don't have a spouse? Your life is in order. You don't have a job? Your life is in order. You don't have a place to stay? Your life is in order. If you truly meditate on that and think about it for a second, you will come to the conclusion that that is a wonderful thing, that your life is bound by law. It goes on to say, I am accord, thus abundance. If this entity was manifested based on intelligence, just think about this for a second. Say, I am accord, thus abundance. If this thing is manifesting based on intelligence, based on the supreme intelligence, based on intelligence par excellence, if this thing was manifesting the cost intelligence and it transitioned its own consciousness to the house, wouldn't you, being intelligent, wouldn't you make sure that everything you need for your life success will be provided? Wouldn't you provide that to yourself? That is only intelligence. See, in our concept, source is not sitting outside of this thing, eating popcorn and laughing at man and woman, being entertained. No, source built this thing and transitioned itself into the house it built. Then it's only intelligent. Intelligence means what? That it's going to provide everything it needs for its success. That's only intelligence. So that's why it says, I am accord, thus abundance. The system manifested to bring about abundance. The system manifests to bring you everything possibly you can need to experience your success. We are functioning so deficiently that we think that abundance goes beyond our need. But if you got everything that you need, your life would be extremely abundant. You're not even getting what you need. That's how powerful Ma'at is. It says your transfiguration is the result of your comprehension of me. It says your transfiguration is the result of your comprehension of me. Only source can comprehend what it manifested. Only source can comprehend what it manifested. Only source can comprehend what it manifested. If you can comprehend, if you can understand, then you just validated that you are the source functioning through the limitations of the mind itself, because only source can comprehend what it manifested. Let's say, for the sake of argument, there were two realities before time and space. One created Ma'at, the other created something else. That entity would not have the ability to comprehend the other because it didn't emanate from it. So the fact that you can comprehend and understand says that you are the source. You just validated that you are the source. And if you recognize that your life is governed by intelligence, then you just validated that. Now, again, And you think about that. If you are the source, manifesting through the limitations of the mind itself, again, we can't say that enough. Then the only thing that separates you from source is what? Just the parameters of the mind. The parameters of the mind sets limitations on the unlimited source and brings you into manifestation. So then, for you are brought into awareness of yourself. You're the only thing that can comprehend Ma'at. So when people come around and say, "Oh, well, God spoke to me," no, well, God, this is God. No. We don't need to talk to God. We don't need to experience God coming down in the flesh. We don't need that. I know God exists. Why? Because I recognize the intelligence. I recognize my life is built on intelligence. I don't need to meet Nebuchadnezzar. I don't need to shake hands with Nebuchadnezzar. I don't need to speak to Nebuchadnezzar, which is impossible. The concept of our men says that this entity cannot be seen outside of myself. That's why the amen means what? Hidden. Source cannot be seen outside of myself, and therefore I cannot see myself, therefore I cannot see God. Or source. I'm sorry, I'm going too far. Let me get back on track here. It says your transfiguration is the result of your comprehension of me. Once you, as the source manifested through the limitations of the mind, becomes aware of the system that you created, became aware of how it works to make you successful, right? Your transfiguration is the result of your comprehension of me. The last thing it says is what? The experience of accord, abundance, and prosperity is a validation of me. The experience of accord, abundance, prosperity is a validation of me. Every part of your life is abundant. There's no way you can throw away abundance. There's nothing that you can do outside of what? Not being able to receive what's there. That's the only thing that we're working with here. So when it says here, your experience of accord, abundance, and prosperity is a validation of me as the supreme intelligence. You are abundant once you transfigure yourself to deserve the abundance from which you desire. You haven't transfigured yourself to the abundance from which you desire. You sit around your house and you play, you do this, you do that. You talk about life. And you have not transfigured yourself to the desire, to what you deserve. You haven't. But you sit around and question life and create your own unhappiness. Unfortunately, we've been trained to think what we call welfare spirituality. That's what you've been trained. So the fact that America has a dominance of welfare doesn't surprise anybody, because they create a welfare spiritual system in which you get undeserved favor. So you don't sit around and think about, maybe I have to transfigure myself to receive my abundance. You start talking about why you in these situations. I can't believe my wife doesn't like me, so you get divorced. You quit so you can change it to something else. You leave your job so you can change it to something else. You think that somebody is going to give you think life is just going to prop success on your lap. So when you're sitting around and, you get something, you think this person up in the sky, but you don't consider the work that was put in to make sure from that other person that provided you with that quote unquote blessing. It says the experience of accord, abundance, and prosperity is a validation of me. What we need to do is simply transfigure ourselves into a person that's deserving of the abundance that we have. I can't sit back and look at other people who I may consider to be beneath me who are quote unquote rich. No, I don't want to be rich in one area and not have something in another. You're right. You can have a beautiful car, but not be able to enjoy a spouse. You see what I'm saying? So I want my wealth to be in alignment to where I am as a person so that I can truly enjoy it. So therefore, my transfiguration is going to be what's responsible for me receiving the wealth that is already there waiting for me. Remember, wealth is not the goal of source. There's nothing that source can receive in this world that will benefit source. What is beneficial to source is our transfiguration into higher experience, from which we receive the blessings that we deserve. Let's go ahead and meditate. I'm about to say something, and I don't want you guys to be offended. If you're still the person you were yesterday, if you're still doing the things, just think about it. If you're still experiencing things that are putting you in a position to question your existence, right? If you're experiencing not having enough money in the bank, not having a place to stay, not having, the abundance that you think, and you've endured those things, and you haven't read the tea leaves, to transfigure yourself, to grow your money, to get into good relationships, then why do you deserve abundance? If I give you $1 million, if you're in a position where you don't have money right now, if I give you $1 million, it's just going to add to your ignorance. And since this system that we exist in is the supreme intelligence, it has a higher vision for you. Well, you are source, so therefore source can't come talk to itself. So it wired this system of intelligence to motivate your evolution. Source said, I'm about to transition myself into the ignorance of man and woman. So I must create a system that even guarantees my own evolution. And it created Ma'at. And it said to itself, once I dwell into the ignorance of man and woman, I'm going to come screaming, clawing, begging to be given something that I do not deserve. And what Source did said, written in my eyes, said, do not acquiesce in that type of behavior. It wrote that in there as a security code. It says I'm going to come to whoever and ask you to give me something I don't deserve. Ask you to give me something that's going to impede my transfiguration into my higher self. It wrote in the code to deny that request. Request denied. Breathe in.